I realize I've talked to like every single PocketQube workshop and conference at this point, so I'll try not to be too repetitive, try and sort of show some interesting things that have happened perhaps in the last sort of 12, 15 months since our last conference, some mission updates, some lessons learned, that sort of thing. So what's the point of Alba? Well, obviously in the context of the PocketQube conference, we want to democratize access to space. That's been the mission since day one. Another mission, which is to image the Earth very frequently. And hopefully by democratizing access to space, we can actually build stuff in space. And that's really the dream, you know. And this is us flying high school kids from a few years ago on Falcon 9 and making that routine, which, to be fair to the Alba launch team, we've really done now a lot. So for those who are not aware, I'll sort of briefly recap the story of Alba, the sort of high level. Started in 2012. It's a cliche, but I started in my bedroom because I had no resources and you had to start somewhere. We now have 3 companies. We have Alba UK, which I guess you guys are familiar with, being in the UK as of today. We have a US division as well, Alba Orbital Inc., which is actually the parent company. And we have a German company, which is where we do all the ground station filing, all the ground station operations. Our first ground station is based just south of Berlin. So we're quite an international company. For being so small in terms of headcount and revenue, we're pretty complicated company structure. We're the world leading PocketQube rideshare broker. Assuming that's like not really news to anyone. We've launched 53 satellites to orbit across 9 flights, which is a lot of satellites and a lot of flights. We raised some capital a few years ago from Combinator, and that's helped a lot. We're building Earth observation constellations, so you guys might have seen Unicorn 2 downstairs. We have that on display, and if you haven't seen it, you should go around the Alba booth and check it out. And we're very vertically integrated, as you can tell, so sort of say we do everything apart from the rocket. Like, we're not really interested in the rocket element. We work with SpaceX, and we've actually flown 7 times now with SpaceX. And they've been a great launch partner for us, to be honest. You know, without them, we wouldn't have been able to launch 53 satellites. So it's been really great to kind of work with those guys. But we do the satellite, we do the ground station, we do the pod, which I guess most people are familiar with, and the launch service. So yeah. So it's an update on Alba launch. Like I was saying there, we've done 53 of 96 PocketQubes have launched with Alba launch. So it's kind of nuts, to be honest. I mean, we're, like the minister was saying earlier, we're sort of inching towards 100 and fairly optimistic that we'll fly the 100th PocketQube in the community this year. So that's good, you know, that's really positive, and sort of like well done to everybody in the community for obviously building your satellites. And I think, like, obviously, for PocketQubes to be taken seriously outside, you know, sort of safe space of a PocketQube conference, that we need to be shown to be like flying regularly and doing interesting missions, like, you know, we've seen in the previous talks. We've flown 19 Alba pods so far, which is a lot of Alba pods, and they're 6p each, so we're over 100p of capacity we've launched into orbit. Which is hard, like, trust me, it's really hard to do that. We've launched 38 customers from 4 continents. I think, yeah, we just really need to get, Africa would be the next one. We need to get somebody from Africa, and we need to get somebody from Oceania. But we have launched in Oceania, technically, with Rocket Labs, so like, I'm not sure if that counts. But we have folks from South America. We have quite a few customers, actually, in South America. We've got a few US customers we've launched, and we've got a few we're going to launch there. We've got mostly European customers. The January flight was pretty much all European. That's a really awesome flight to be part of, because there's so many teams, and you met a lot of them today that we flew their first missions. And then we've flown an Asian satellite. We have another Asian satellite that we're going to be launching as well. So it's really starting to kind of pick up. Some highlights, because we have so many launches, I don't want to like bore everyone with every single launch campaign. And they all start to blend into each other at some point, which is a nice problem to have, I guess. So we obviously flew Flight 8. You've met, I think, 4 of the teams, or 3 of the teams on Flight 8. We have a 4th team, Hydrospace, we'll be talking tomorrow as well. That was a really cool mission because there were so many like countries like launching their first ever PocketQube. So we were like Portugal, obviously. We had Poland, we had Luxembourg. We had folks in Turkey on that flight. Spain, and we had like Smart IR, obviously, with UK connection. So I mean, like, there's so many countries represented in that launch, and for me, that was really awesome, and that's kind of what we want to do with PocketQubes is getting folks flying stuff that, to be honest, without PocketQubes, it'd be much, much harder for them to be flying, and we wouldn't be flying in the numbers we are without that kind of form factor. Some of you guys may be aware of the previous flight. We just flew, I think it was a week ago, last Saturday before, like maybe 10 days ago, something like that. It was sort of lost track, but we have another 5 PocketQubes currently in orbit on a OTV, so they're on a deorbit transfer vehicle, and we're waiting for them to get deployed. So that's likely to happen in a few weeks, so stay posted for that. And the interesting thing about that flight is we have 3 unicorns on board, unicorn being our satellite. Near-term future flights, so flight 10 is sold out. We've got 4 customers, so you met some of them today, obviously. And then we have flight 11, so we're about half sold on that one, so that's Q1 2026. So we've got 4 customers so far, and that'll likely be a much bigger flight. And we have more launches booked and planned. So we've got like a ton of customers we need to announce. We've just been really, we got a lot of customers the last 3-4 months, which has been awesome, and the business is really starting to pick up, which is awesome. So thanks for everyone that signed up with Alba in the sort of last few months, and any time, but particularly the last few months, we've been struggling to kind of get all the good news out. So yeah. So some thoughts on launching 53 PocketQubes, because that's a lot of PocketQubes. I mean, it's really easy to make a concept for a pod, and like not like it's really hard to launch 9 times, like really hard. Like there's so many things you have to get good at. You know, you have to have a pod that's qualified. You have to be able to build it reliably. It has to be cost effective. You have to manage supply chains. You need to build a relationship with launch brokers. You have to build credibility. You have to get customers. You have to do it again and again and again and again. Like we've been doing it since 2019 was when we launched our first satellite. You got to build the company as well. So like all these things, like the Alba team definitely makes it look easy, but like it's hard. It's a hard game. So like, you know, I just want to sort of emphasize that. You know, like concepts are easy. Flying 9 times is hard. You want to get your license sorted early. That's like the cliche way to screw up your mission. And the great thing now is we have a huge data set of folks that say they want to fly a PocketQube, and then you say, well, do they end up flying a PocketQube, or do they just talk about flying a PocketQube? And obviously Alba can only launch the people that actually show up and, you know, are licensed to fly, which for a lot of new teams is a bit of a culture shock. And certainly in the early days was the common way to screw up your mission, was not to get your license in time. So obviously it's not very sexy, but make sure that you're applying early, that you've got a game plan to get through ITU. If you're an amateur, that you have a game plan to go through IRU. Yeah, just generally take that more seriously. That was like the big thing. And if you know, to treat it like your passport, if you don't have a passport, you can't get on a plane, right? So, but the amount of people that don't have a passport or don't apply for a passport is kind of crazy. When there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, I mean, certainly, like if you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. Like it's like, you know, like if you've got passion to make this happen, you can get to orbit. And if you've not already launched to orbit, and if you got to orbit, then, you know, you've always figured out how you can get there. Just like, obviously, if you want to keep doing it, then you know the way to orbit. But we see a lot of people like have the idea of wanting to PocketQube and talking about PocketQubes, and maybe they make some prototypes, but you just feel that they're just never going to get to orbit. So you really got to be determined and really driven and just kind of pushing it forward, you know, and that's like one thing I would say, like, you know, and also those people tend to end up having better missions as well, you know. If you're really like driven and really want to make it happen, maybe you get a few setbacks, a few failures, but ultimately in the end, you know, you do make it work. I think the other thing is just leverage the community. So like we have this amazing community now that anybody here can go chat to somebody else that's flown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 PocketQubes or more, you know. And, you know, obviously that didn't exist 5, 10 years ago. Like we didn't have this support, you know, and the first one we ever ran here, we had like 1 guy flying a PocketQube, you know. And now there's maybe like nearly double digits worth of people here that have flown, or teams, you know, unique teams that have flown missions, you know. So for the new teams, obviously try and leverage that, chat to somebody that's flown something before, and just, you know, just don't like be an information silo. Like just if you can share stuff, if you can network, if you can ask somebody. I think everyone's pretty willing to help if you ask them, but we're just trying to get people in the room and chat to each other, which sounds like the easy bit, but like honestly, it gets you pretty far. So yeah, these are the launches so far. So this is 7 Falcon 9s, 2 Electrons. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what I can really add other than it's a lot of rockets. And obviously, like, everybody knows SpaceX, but certainly without SpaceX, I don't think we'd be flying as many satellites as we are. And I think the good thing is we've made it kind of possible that, like, folks like SpaceX take PocketQube seriously, you know, because before we started doing it, they'd never flown any PocketQubes before. So I think on both ends, like us trying to show there's a path, and also credible folks like taking bets on us to allow us to get there. And there was a lot of issues in the early days about tracking, and it's certainly still in America, you go chat to people and I'll get like sort of, you know, somebody will come and tell me how they can't track the PocketQubes, you know, which is, it's kind of crazy because we've launched nearly 100 of them now, and there's hundreds of thousands of TLEs on the database if people go look, you know, so. And the more we fly, hopefully the more we will fly, you know, it's like kind of like a momentum thing where, you know, it's really hard to get that first launch away, and then getting the second launch away was hard too, but now we've got, you know, companies, and we've got university programs, and we've got like ESA programs, and then Saudi Arabian space programs. Hopefully now the more people that are building, and there's open source PocketQubes now as well, which is awesome. This was the video from earlier, so it was on Alex's slides. I won't bore you with it, but basically it's a quadruple deployment of PocketQubes, so you can kind of see the 4 dots of light. And we have actually 3 videos now of deployments in orbit, or I think there's actually technically 5 deployments we've done that are on video, so if you guys want to see some cool deployments, then go check it out. And you can actually, each one of those dots is a PocketQube that we've launched, so like Hype's one of them, Prometheus is one of them, there's one from Luxembourg, and then there's a 3P. So one of the first ever things I did when I started Alba was I hired a product design engineer, because I didn't really know what engineers did, or like what, you know, the differences and the nuances on the different skills. So I was kind of looking for a mechanical engineer, but I ended up with a product design engineer, and she was really good at doing renders. So I got her to do this render of a bunch of 1Ps in orbit looking cool. And I only realized, like, if you've done a freeze frame on the video and you kind of turn it sideways, it kind of looks pretty similar, you know, albeit not maybe as, you know, interesting, but that was the render, and then that's reality. And it's like really hard to go from the render to reality, but we finally did it, so I'm really chuffed with that. PocketQube launch, so I mean, we've, our pricing's public, it's 25K for 1P, 60K for 3P. Like, we've had the same prices for like ever, because like, you know, prices go up, prices go down. I mean, my general theory on it is that if you kind of put in a grant proposal, you kind of don't want the price to change between you putting in the proposal and hopefully you win in the proposal. So, and we have like lots of demand, so like, you know, that seems to be going pretty well. This is where it started for Alba. So this was our first ever office, 2014, the air hockey table, which we no longer have. It was donated to, I think, Andy's son, so yeah. We had no money for carpets, that's why we didn't have carpets, and yeah. And this is us 12 years later with a very similar aesthetic, but I just like big empty spaces, you know. And yeah, 12 years later, we took this massive warehouse, which is near the Glasgow airport. So you guys that flew into Glasgow airport, it's pretty close there. And then this is what it looks like now. So we've really been moving and grooving in terms of our construction. So we're doing tours, obviously, like we usually do. So that's day 3 of the conference, which is Thursday. So there'll be a sign-up sheet tomorrow, or our website or something. We'll put our QR codes in. Obviously, Thursday, we do like groups of people come around. We can show you guys. And it's really the first PocketQube factory in the world. And really our goal there is to mass produce PocketQubes, you know. So we've got really just some crazy facilities now, and that's really on the back of a lot of hard work from a lot of people over a long period of time, and obviously raising the investment, but also building the business. And we're really like committed to PocketQubes, obviously, as you can tell, you know, being at a PocketQube conference. We have like office space, we have subsystem assembly rooms, we have clean rooms, all that sort of stuff. So these are our latest 3 unicorns. So it's O, P, and Q is where we've got to, so also known as satellite 16, 17, and 18 internally. So we're really getting into like some serious numbers now in terms of flights. Yeah. So we now launched 18 into orbit. I say into orbit, we haven't deployed the last 3 because that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. So Andy's going to give a more detailed breakdown tomorrow in his talk. So he'll do more of a technical kind of snapshot. So he'll kind of talk about maybe the last 5 unicorns we have flown and what we are doing differently. I mean, I don't want to give too much of a spoiler away, but at the high level, we've got 17 pictures downlinked now. Majority from J. We have some from N. 4 out of the 5 unicorns, last unicorns flown home. So we've seen improvements in quality, which is really good. It's hard to bat 100, to be honest, especially when you're doing so much experimentation. The main thing on our end was our batteries were getting really cold. There's something we really screwed up. But I think, to be honest, looking at some of the other PocketQube's data, we're seeing that thermals is one of those things that doesn't scale down very well. Like, we don't have the thermal mass that a bigger satellite has. So we do actually have to take thermals seriously as a community. We've been working with a company called Radiant Systems in Spain, and they've been really helpful. So we've been doing a lot more thermal simulations and taking it a lot more seriously. And our PB is minus 37 degrees C, which is really cold. And it turns out your satellite doesn't want to be minus 37 for very long. So I wouldn't recommend it. So we've got a bunch of upgrades. And we can talk about that tomorrow. Our longest running unicorn so far is J, which was 30 days, and we did that twice. So that was Elliot that really helped with that. So big props to Elliot for keeping them running for 30 days. And then we had one satellite run for 15 days without resets. I mean, certainly we find with our satellites that they really want to reset, so like it really doesn't want to live. It's really hard to keep the thing going. And that can be thermals, it can be power, it can be weird bugs, So just to try to keep the satellite running is like the biggest challenge, I think, for doing these missions, And get it running long enough that you can actually do more advanced operations is a huge challenge. We have 5 facilities. So actually, like another part of the business which isn't necessarily directly related to PocketQubes is shaking folks' stuff. So we've had some like non-space customers come in recently, and we've qualified a lot of folks' satellites. We do our own stuff in-house now, just to kind of support the flight rate that we're doing. That's available for folks if they're interested in that. I thought I'd maybe just do a slide on some thoughts about where we are as a community and maybe some things to consider and sort of ponder. So like for us, I mean, our internal goal is really sellable pictures. So we have 17 photos so far. They're not great. They're like a drunk guy coming out of a pub trying to take photos is probably like the quality we've currently got. Not great. Something we're trying to improve on the next mission. And we're just trying to figure like where we're going wrong in terms of the optic system. So we're doing a lot more thorough testing on the ground. We're doing a lot more testing. We're doing a lot more before and after vibe testing. We're doing before bakeout testing and after bakeout testing. Lots of things just to try and improve the reliability of that optic system. And like optics is its own field. It's a discipline for a reason. You need to kind of treat it with respect. I think the big challenge is to make PocketQubes like profitable long term. So if you think about it, PocketQubes cost money, your time costs money, parts cost money, launch costs money, and I've not really seen anybody in the community, including ourselves, that's been able to turn a profit just on the data aspect of a PocketQube. I think like the tech demo aspect is definitely a business model that appears to be working for some folks, and like it's a good way to get new folks into the community is to provide a bus for another customer. When you have a more reliable system than maybe somebody that's just started building. But I think as a community, if we really want the community to take off, we have to see, can we return 100 pictures that are sellable for more than the cost of the inputs, And that's something that Alba is basically spending a large percentage of our time trying to figure out, can we get a reliable Earth observation platform that is good enough to serve a group of users? That's something we're still pushing on with. So scaling in the education world, I mean, the question is really, are PocketQubes becoming the default option now? You've obviously seen a ton of talks today. There's a ton of talks tomorrow, I think we have like 29 talks at the conference this year. We're seeing that ESA are sort of treating PocketQubes on parity with CubeSats in Europe. We're starting to see Saudi Arabia and Space Agency doing solely PocketQubes. There's a lot of organic stuff coming from the PocketQube world in education that's very like bottoms up, you know. So I think the question really is like, is that becoming the default for first timers and new teams, you know? And in which regions, particularly in Europe, it seems that we're pretty. The community is relatively large in Europe relative to other places. I think another big challenge is making a real marketplace for products and services. So we have an exhibition downstairs, and that's our sort of attempt to try and help, you know, facilitate that. Because we know lots of people that do lots of things, and we know who's good at stuff, and we know who's, you know, in development, you know. And yeah, for us, like I think trying to create that ecosystem, and early CubeSat had lots of vendors that were providing different parts of the supply chain, like radios and power systems and things. And I think that's something that we've really struggled with as a community. You know, there's really not that marketplace for parts and subsystems and like radios and solar panels. And I mean, maybe we're missing something there, maybe we're not. Maybe we're always going to go open source, you know. So I think like one of the other things I was thinking about was, if a team disbands, say like the Hype team, for example, they disband, it'd be really cool to have like teams that are moving on to other things, like open source their designs so that future builders could, you know, come in and basically start from where they finished, you know. And we've created a list on our website, which is all the open source Pocket projects we're aware of, and links to the repos. And if we're missing anybody on that list, it's on the website. Like, let us know. We're trying to keep it as accurate as possible. And the thing for us is like we'd love to see like more advanced open source designs from builders that are doing interesting stuff. And then when you're starting your first PocketQube, now you have an option of 8 or 9 designs you can start from that most of them have flown at some point, you know. So you're not starting from like maybe one open source design or maybe no open source designs. There's a lot of stuff just to start from that would really sort of lower the barrier to entry. And then just in general, you know, thoughts on PocketQubes. Like I say, it looks like we'll cross 100 PocketQubes this year. This is a graph between the early PocketQubes launch on the red and then the CubeSats on the blue. So I think the interesting takeaway is the first 6 years of PocketQubes, we didn't really launch much. You know, nothing really happened. And I started a company just after the first launch, and it was pretty bleak. I wouldn't recommend building a PocketQube in 2015. It wasn't very fun. Pretty lonely. So we had about a 6-year period where nothing really happened, whereas the CubeSat community started off early. They started launching. They were doing lots of 2s and 3s and 4s, you know, and they were actually had much more of a cadence than we did. More of a linear growth, but then we really seemed to pick it up between year 6 and year 10. Like that's when we launched. So of those 96 satellites, 92 of them have launched since December 2019. You know, so we're seeing like a huge like kind of hockey stick type scenario here, where people are not only like building their satellites, they're building their second satellite a hell of a lot quicker, and sometimes they're building companies that are then launching lots of satellites, which I think is really cool, and that's kind of getting this almost like hockey stick type growth. And I think it bodes really well. Is like we tried to get to the 100th PocketQube this year, and it kind of tracks very well. We've certainly narrowed, in terms of the days since the first satellite on the standard launch, we're really narrowing the gap with the CubeSats, but then they start taking off once like Planet Labs come along and they figure out how to make money, and a ton of VC money goes in. Yeah, so like I say, we have a lot of customers in Europe, and it's starting to grow internationally. So you actually see like a lot of folk traveling from outside Europe to this event, which is awesome. And you know, there's like 3 continents represented, and a really big appreciation to everyone that's traveled from basically all corners of the world, to be honest, that are into this and they want to make it happen and find like-minded people, you know, they're not like the odd person at a conference who's into PocketQubes. This is like a kind of a conference dedicated for that stuff. And obviously we've been accepted now by. We've flown Rocket Lab, we've flown SpaceX. There was a lot of preconceived reasons that we couldn't do that. And we've sort of kicked down the door there, which I think is awesome. And like I say, you know, obviously the growth of the community and the sort of trend line I think is really positive. And we've kind of done that being the second standard, if you will. So like CubeSat's never had to compete with the CubeSat. Right? We've had to compete with a lot more incumbents. And we've still been able to grow the community, we've still been able to thrive, and we've still been able to show that, you know, we just want to fly our PocketQubes, and we've been able to get a lot of stuff in orbit, which I think is really ultimately what people care about, to be honest. Like, we can talk about it, we can, you know, do CADs, we can do whatever, but like launching and having successful missions is really the thing that people care about, and that's why I think, you know, hopefully the future is going to be quite positive for PocketQubes. So, do we have any questions? Oh.